What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Titanfall 2 on BlackTideTV. Titanfall, one of my smaller featured games on the channel. I've done a few Titanfall videos in the past. It's never been as big as Call of Duty or even Destiny, really. Destiny is becoming a bigger part of the channel, whereas Titanfall, I really wanted it to be a big part of the channel, but I really never found the space for it at the time. That was when I was full-time doing YouTube. I was doing a ton of Call of Duty content, Modern Warfare Remastered, and Infinite Warfare, and it just fell through the cracks. Unfortunately, because I really like this game. I turned on Titanfall 2 today for the first time in forever, and I was playing a little bit online, and that's the gameplay you're seeing today. It might not be the most fluid gameplay, it might not be the most beautiful gameplay. You see some of these Titanfall masters out there, and it's just a work of art how they move through the map. They throw their grappling hook and they're spinning and meleeing and sliding. And I'm like, my mind is blown by how these people can move through the game. How much experience they must have in the game. But this was like my third game on today. So I've been playing Destiny where the movement is quite a bit slower. So I'm not really up and at it with the Titanfall movement system. It's not the greatest gameplay in the world, but that's not really what we're here to talk about. I'd like to talk about some disconcerting news I've been privy to recently about the Titanfall series, more about Respawn Entertainment, the developers of the Titanfall series, and EA, the publisher of the game, because a bunch of little news stories that have come out have kind of raised the red flag for me about Titanfall, because I really like this game and I want future Titanfall games to improve on it. The original Titanfall was a multiplayer experience at best. It was a beta. The original Titanfall game was only on Xbox and PC, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't the most polished game, and it was a really cool standout. It was very different for its time, but in the long run, it was at best a beta, at best an incomplete game. And Titanfall 2 really took all of the ideas from that original game and they built on that and they made it into a serious contender. Unfortunately, EA brought out Titanfall 2 at a terrible time. I think they released Titanfall 2 in September of 2016. That was right before all of the big games came out. They brought it out directly before Call of Duty, directly before Battlefield, if not right around the same time as those games. They never gave this game time to grow. They should have released it in the middle of the summer when other shooters were at a low, so that it could be at a high and people would be very interested in Titanfall going forward, because as good as Titanfall is, Call of Duty compared to Titanfall, even though there are a lot of people out there that despise Call of Duty, there are a lot of people out there that really love Call of Duty, and there's really no comparison when you're looking at the two. Call of Duty's been a AAA game for 10 years. Titanfall, in comparison, is relatively new to the scene. But here's the issue that I've been coming across recently with these little news updates that I've been hearing about Respawn Entertainment, the developer, and EA, the publisher. There are two big things that have come up recently that are leading me to believe that the Titanfall series is coming to an end. That there may not be a Titanfall 3. And if there is a Titanfall 3, it won't be developed for a number of years, which is kind of annoying because Titanfall 2 is no longer receiving updates. I noticed this when I turned on the game today for the first time. Obviously, I haven't been playing this game consistently throughout the year, but there's always been a new update whenever I go back to the game. I'll play Call of Duty for a couple months, I'll play Destiny for a month or so, and I'll come back, and there's always been like a big update. There's always been something that's recently happened. Here's a new weapon, here's a new creative class, here's a new Titan, here's a new map. The last update for Titanfall 2 was in August. So there hasn't been an update since August. That's September, October now. We haven't seen a huge update, whereas every single month beforehand there's been new content being added, very similar to Modern Warfare Remastered. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, considering my last video where I talked about Modern Warfare Remastered coming to an end. Titanfall, this is a bigger problem than Modern Warfare Remastered, because there are two big things that have recently come out. The first being Respawn Entertainment is currently working on two, not one, two brand new video games. Neither one of those are the sequel to Titanfall. Or sequel to Titanfall 2, I should say. Neither one of those are Titanfall 3. Those two big games that are coming out are going to take up all of Respawn's time. Respawn Entertainment, well, the game seems like a AAA game. Titanfall seems like a AAA game. Respawn Entertainment is not a AAA developer. They are not a huge development studio like Infinity Ward, like Treyarch, who make the Call of Duty games. They're not that big. They can't control all of these different situations. They can't make that many games at once. They're making 2 games right now. That's a lot for even the biggest video game studio. They're currently working on a new VR game, which is new technology. It's probably going to take a long time for them to develop that game. They're also working on a new Star Wars game, which is not Star Wars Battlefront 2 or Battlefront 3 or any kind of offshoot of the Battlefront series, which we'll actually be talking about in a second. But it's a completely new Star Wars game. And this one has been in the works for quite some time. This new Star Wars game has been in the works since the time they released Titanfall 2. They've been working on that game for a very, very long time. So they're working on 2 games right now, which is taking up a ton of Respawn Entertainment's workload. And maybe while they were working on the Star Wars game, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But now that they're working on a VR title, VR titles are so much more complicated than anything else to develop that they're probably going to be stuck working on these 2 games for the next 2 to 3 years easy. But that's fine, because the publisher doesn't seem to want to put out any more Titanfall games because they've basically lined up a popular first-person shooter schedule over at EA, Electronic Arts, the publisher for Titanfall 2. Basically, they also publish DICE games, which you may be familiar with. Battlefield 1, Star Wars Battlefront, and Star Wars Battlefront 2. Now, they've basically come out to say that there will be a set-in-stone schedule for an annual release of a DICE game from EA. Last year, 2016, saw the release of Battlefield 1. This year, 2017, Star Wars Battlefront 2. They will continue alternating titles every year for the foreseeable future. This has been put out there in a statement by EA. Next year, there's going to be another Battlefield game. Let's call it Battlefield 2 for whatever sakes. Who knows what they're going to call that game, because Battlefield 2 is already a thing. Battlefield 2 Bad Company. Battlefield 1.5. Regardless, Battlefield 2 is coming out next year. It's basically guaranteed by EA. And the year after that, Star Wars Battlefront 3. Now, traditionally, Battlefield games have been multi-year titles. Battlefield 4 was the most recent Battlefield until Battlefield 1. Battlefield 4 was out for probably 4 years. I think it came out in 2012. That's an old game, and that's how Battlefield used to roll. But now, because of the popularity of Battlefield 1 and the popularity of the Star Wars Battlefront series, the new Star Wars Battlefront series, EA is doubling down. They want a first-person shooter, an online multiplayer first-person shooter, hitting the market every single year to compete with games like Call of Duty, which already have been on this annual cycle for the last 10 years. So, with a new DICE game coming out every year, Battlefield, Battlefront, Battlefield, Battlefront, where is the space for a Titanfall game? It would be really great to see them fit that Titanfall 3 into their schedule, into their popular first-person shooters, because that's what made Titanfall 2 doomed to fail in the first place, was making Titanfall 2 compete against their own game, Battlefield 1, in the market when it came out. That was an awful idea. They basically just threw Titanfall out just to get a couple extra dollars for their development of DLC and whatever else for Battlefield. They didn't give Titanfall a fair shot, and it doesn't look like they're going to be giving Titanfall a fair shot in the future. Again, who even knows if they're going to be working on a Titanfall in the future, because Respawn Entertainment is now super busy working on 2 other games. So I really hate being the bearer of bad news, but I'm just noticing these things. I watch other video game channels, I watch news channels and all that stuff, and I just notice these similarities, and I'm like, wait a second, Respawn Entertainment's working on a new game. Well, what about Titanfall 3? Because Titanfall 2 did fairly well for itself, it just didn't compete with Call of Duty, it didn't compete with Battlefield or Battlefront this year for that matter. It was a great game, and I'd love to see them improve on it with the Titanfall 3, but that might not ever happen. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, it helps out more than you know. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next video, probably Modern Warfare Remastered.